How do you stack up against everyone your age? In this video, I'll be going over how much you earn and how that looks against everyone your age, and I'll be focusing mainly on the 18 to 29 year olds here. I'll talk about how much you need to earn to be in what percentage of your bracket and how much you need to have in debt and savings and stuff like that, and where your living situation is and what that looks like on the average against your population of your peer group. We all know comparison is the thief of joy, but sometimes it's fun to compare. Again, you already dealt with your card, so keep that in mind. It doesn't matter what other people are doing, it's what you're doing and what you've been dealt with. But let's have a look at what other people are doing and where you sit in relation to them. Because honestly, I think it will surprise you. Now, all of these figures are taken from the ONS data back in 2018, so it's a little bit outdated, but I've moved some of the numbers to be in 2024's figures. So this should give you a really good indication of where you sit as pretty recent data updated again to 2024's numbers. So if you're 18 to 21, unsurprisingly, 75% of this population live at home with parents. This is kind of obvious. 20% of these people do actually rent a home and 5% of people actually own a home. Although that's a low number, that's still a crazy high number for 18-year-olds to 21-year-olds. I mean, at 18, I was not going to be able to buy a house. So if that's you, congratulations. You are well in the top 1% of people for that one. The average savings, so the amount of money you have in a savings pot to your name, is £1,500. That's the average. The crazy part, though, is that from people ages 18 to 29, 59% of these people have no savings. People, that's not okay. Look, I understand if you've got like rough living situations or something like that, or you've got to take care of relatives or anything like that. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people who earn money and then spend all of it. That is not all right. At this point in your life, it is so easy to stash away money. It is so easy. I know, I've been there. You can stash away so much money so much quicker than you could ever in the rest of your life, especially because 75% of you live at home. There's no reason you to be spending all of your paycheck. You can save money. I promise you, you can. Also, if you can help it, stay at home as long as possible. Obviously not ridiculously long. You don't want to be there when you're 40, but I'm just saying, if you can save another 1 or 2 years of that money, it will go a long way. Again, obviously, this is assuming that your parents are okay with it and that it makes financial sense for you to stay at home. If they're charging you a ridiculous rent, then you might as well rent somewhere else. But if they're not charging you any rent, or they're charging you a little bit of rent and you can save a lot of your paycheck, do that. The vast majority of people ages 18 to 21 have...
In 2024's numbers, it looks about £1,500 to be on average, but you're probably looking more about £2,000 or £3,000 if you want to be in the upper echelon.
Debt. This is an absolute killer. It's absolutely horrible to see this stat. If you have no debt, and by that I mean no consumer debt, student loans I'm not counting in any of this video. If you have student loans, that doesn't count. Also, I'm not counting a mortgage. This is just consumer debt. So this is Klarna, credit cards, stuff like that. If you have £0 on any of those, you are doing much better than the average. 64% of people 18 to 29 have more than £1,000 in consumer debt. This is not okay. You have no savings and debt, that's not happening. It's hard to get debt figures on 18 to 21-year-olds, so I'll talk about debt a little bit later when I talk about 22 to 29-year-olds. Stay out of debt as much as possible. You are not going to be in a fancy car. You can't be insured on one. There's no point wasting your money on that stuff. Don't buy stuff on Klarna. Just buy it if you can afford it. Just don't be done with your money. Just save some of your money. I can't believe I have to say that. What about the salary for your age? So if you're 18 to 21, the median salary, so if you lined everyone up your age and you pick the middle person, they would earn £9,000 a year, almost £10,000 a year. If you want to get real specific, £9,912 per year. But this is kind of skewed because a lot of people your age will be working half-time or part-time. That will skew the numbers. Full-time work, I would imagine, is probably around the 18k mark a year, before tax, by the way. What about the 22 to 29-year-olds? Now, the salary figure for these lot are obviously going to go way up. This is a much bigger age range and you're going to be earning a lot more, and most of these people will be, working full-time. Now, the median salary for this age group jumps up to £25,000 a year, with only 7% of this age group earning more than £50,000 a year. Now, I would imagine as well that the data on this is the older echelon of these people will be the 7%. I don't think there'll be many like 22-year-olds on £50,000 a year. There'll be the odd occasional one, but most of that will sit towards the 29 end of the scale. 80% of people earn less than £37,000 a year, and that makes sense. A lot of our key earning years are still ahead of us. Late 30s, 40s, and potentially even 50s will be the years where you earn the most money. This is where you're setting up your career. So it makes sense to be not really earning much more than £40,000 a year. So what about living arrangements? Now, 31% of people live with parents. 41% of people rent. So this is by far the biggest majority, which means 26% of people are homeowners. This makes sense. A lot of the data for the average first-time home buyer is the average age of that person is 35. As prices become higher to buy a house, a lot of people are turning to renting as they can't afford the down payment, and it makes sense. These are your lower income years, and these are the years you're going to be like, also taking on a lot of responsibility in terms of kids and other things like that. And most people either live at home or rent accommodation. Savings. This is ugly. This is a median is £1,600 for ages 22 to 29. That's insane. That just isn't enough. If an emergency happens, £1,600 is getting you nowhere. It'll get you maybe halfway. Like, that's nothing. If you lost your job tomorrow, if your car exploded, if anything like that, £1,600 is not really making a dent. The general rule is you have 3 months worth of expenses, or whatever it costs you to live, you have 3 months of that built up in an account and safe. Ideally, if you're stretching to be better, then I would recommend 6 months of this money. And this again just helps you if you lose your job, or if God forbid something terrible happens to someone, you need to take care of them or anything like that, you have money to live on. £1,600 will not help you in any way really. And it's expensive to be poor. If you lose a £1,600 on an emergency and you need to go into debt, interest will start accruing and you're just becoming in a snowball effect. It's not a good place to be. It's actually fascinating if you look at this chart, because the distribution of people, a lot of people are at zero, but there are a lot of people who are above the 6K mark. Now I would imagine those people at that end are the people who are home owners. They have built up the muscle of saving and are able to actually own the home because they've saved the deposit. It's not really the monthly payment that you need to be worried about. Most people can make a rent payment or make a mortgage payment. It's the massive down payment you have to put down of 10%. You can get away with 5% for some mortgages and first time buyers, but still, I would imagine the people who are really good at saving are the people who are good with money just in general and have home ownership status instead of renting. Even if buying a house is not your goal, you should still have the muscle built up of saving, as this is super important throughout your entire life. It doesn't matter how much you earn. If you're on 100 grand a year, that's amazing. But if you don't take home any of it or keep any of it in your savings account, it doesn't matter. It's not impressive at all. Doesn't matter how much you make, it's how much you keep. And this translates over to the debt section. The median debt is £1,900. That why? This is consumer debt, by the way. This does not need it. If you compare the median number we saw in the savings account of £1,600, people are negative overall. Again, it's really, we're just learning. It doesn't matter how big and fat your fancy salary is. If you don't keep any of it, it does not matter. If you want to be above in your age group, if you have £2,000 or more, ideally more than that, saved, and you're on a salary of like 26 grand before tax, then that is probably above average or at average. The biggest part though is if you have no debt, you are way above average. That is better than most people. Statistically, half of you will be feeling pretty smug. You'll have more than that amount of money in savings accounts and your debt will still be zero. Some of you will be feeling quite bad. Statistically, again, it'll be about 50% of you. And for the people who are feeling bad, it's okay. It's not that bad. We'll be able to figure it out. It will be fine. These are the earlier years. You can fix the mistakes you're making now. Just don't make them as you get older, because it will hurt you even more. You need to do two things to start off with. You need to get out of debt, and that's not too hard to do. You're only in £1,000, £1,500 of debt, and you'll be bringing in a decent amount of money. You can knock that down within 3 or 6 months. Then you need to cut up any credit cards you have. You are not a credit card person. If you're using Klarna, close your account. Please just get away from it as much as possible. I want you to do well, and I want your money to work for you and actually be able to see retirement and do nice things. And you can't do that if you have this debt snowball like chain hanging you back. It's just a terrible thing to start your life off with. First of all, get out of debt. That's step one. And you can do that. A better way to do that is if you download an app called Snoop. It's not an ad, it's just a good app. And you link all your bank accounts to it. It'll show you where you're spending your money, and you can then track it and see what you need to cut. And then step two is you need to build this emergency fund, the savings pot of 3 months of expenses, or ideally 6 months of expenses, especially if you have children. It needs to be 6 months. It is vital that everyone has a cash buffer in this world. You don't know what's going to happen, and it's nice to have that security of 3 months or 6 months. If anything went wrong, you're okay. And like I said, it's expensive to be poor. If you get into like debt and stuff like that, your interest rates will start adding on to it. Your minimum payment will be more, and you'll just never feel like you're getting your way out. At the moment, if you have like £1,500, £2,000 worth of debt, you can get out of that. If you have 10, 20 grand of debt, it starts working against you really fast. Make it a habit as well to pay yourself first and pay your savings first. And if you're not good at saving, like if you put it into the account and then take it out, get it into an account where you have to lock it away and you can't touch the money. And if you're above the average, don't be that smug. It's still not that great. If you have £2,000 in your bank account, that's still not that great. You need to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. So you still need to be saving more than you are currently. If you are younger and you don't have any debt, please stay away from debt. There's no point getting any of it. It doesn't mean anything. You don't need it. Whatever you're thinking of buying, you don't need. Can't buy it in cash. You can't afford it. If you are interested in buying a house, or one day want to potentially buy a house, or just want to know the finances about it, watch this video. I go over it all there. I recommend you watch it now and actually start getting started with it, because otherwise you will be priced out of the market sooner rather than later. So get on that video, watch that